We are now moving on to topic 4, early civilizations of India. Before we get into the first lesson, I would like to show a topic video about Indian classical dance in the modern world.
I think this art helps us connect to our broader culture. It's a tool for us to express who we are. The dance form is called Bharatanatyam, and it has its origins in South India, and specifically Tamil Nadu. It's a state in southeastern India. When I teach dance, I get a lot of students who grew up in this country, and because they're so far away from their culture of origin, it's hard for them to relate to who they are in the context of New York City or the United States. I think learning dance helps them identify with their background, with their culture, have a sense of pride in who they are.
Having moved abroad recently in New York, I think it's a wonderful way to connect with your culture and the tradition that you belong to.
It's amazing to be in such a diverse community and, in the city where all these different things are coming in and I'm, absorbing everything, and that reflects on me on stage.
It came in as a completely pleasant surprise when I moved in here, and to see the respect they have for artists. They keep the art form as pure as they can. It's as pure as it is in India.
So this is traditional Indian classical dance makeup, and what we're doing right now is we're putting it on for performance. So we really highlight the eyes, make our eyes look bigger, because as you'll see in the dance, we use a lot of our eye movements that relate to our abstract dance, which we call nritta, and also our abhinaya, or expression. This is traditional temple jewelry from South India. This is what Devadasis, or the traditional dancers, used to wear when they danced. And you also see the same kind of jewelry similarly worn by brides in South India. So because the Devadasis were so-called married to the god lord of the temple, they would also dress like a bride. So this is why we still wear this very traditional jewelry. This is a stitched costume, skirt costume made from a traditional sari. And this is a variation of what was traditionally worn way back by the Devadasis. They actually wore saris. So this is based on the sari costume. Bharatanatyam is based on Carnatic music. And Carnatic music is a system of Indian classical music that hails from South India. And it's really tied to Hindu philosophy. It was danced by women called Devadasis in temples as a form of worship to the god of the temple. There's actually no real specific date of origin of this dance. I mean, some say it's like 2,000 years old. So at that time when the Devadasis were dancing, they were part of a lineage of women who would pass this art down. And now Bharatanatyam is performed mostly in theaters across the world.
I studied Indian classical music, tradition called Carnatic music. The way I relate to my cultural background is through music. The piece today, it's called Shajam, and Shajam is the name for the first note in Indian classical tradition, similar to Do. The interesting thing about this particular piece is it's a different take on a very traditional scale called Natak.
When I choreograph new works, it's based on the traditional language, the movement vocabulary of our dance form. So we have a system of hand gestures. It's almost like sign language. We have a series of single hand gestures that we use called asamyukta hastas. When we use them when we're telling a story or doing abhinaya, which is expression, they do convey a meaning. So one hand gesture can have several meanings and used within the context of a dance choreography or a song. It has different meanings.
There are a lot of reasons why I really like to do dance now. It's a form of expression. There is that individuality that you're left to interpret that verse the way you want.
It has such a strong legacy. It has been passed on from generation to generation. So that itself it's something you're proud of.
I get to take these poems, these poetry that, have either been written 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and sometimes even older than that. But I get to interpret it. How do I take the messages that they're sending to us and make it applicable to our lives today, if it's in India or if it's in the US or anywhere?
All right. So let's go ahead back. And we are going to move into topic 4, lesson 1, which is Indus Valley civilization. So as we get in there, right here is our e-text. Remember, if you get this big wall in your way, just click this arrow and it will move it out of your way, and then you can see the text.
Lesson 1. The Indus Valley Civilization. The first civilizations arose near rivers. One such civilization was in South Asia. Its people farmed along the Indus River. Farmers grew plenty of food and populations grew. In time, some of the people settled in towns and cities and formed governments.
All right, so that first video was showing us some Indian culture here. It sounded like they were in New York City, so trying to keep their culture, but they were showing us the way of dance in India. So let's go ahead and watch this video for lesson 1 and see what it's all about.
The first great civilizations in the ancient world grew up along great rivers. Why do you suppose that was true? Well, most people at that time still lived by farming and herding, which meant that you had to have a water supply you could depend on. Even after people started to live in towns and cities, having enough food and water was still important. In India, the earliest civilizations grew up along the mighty Indus River. The Indus flows out of the towering Himalayas in the north and spreads out over onto a wide plain. Melting snow and ice flooded the Indus Valley and left rich soil behind. Then, in the summer, wet monsoon winds blew from the ocean across the land, bringing still more water. So, in some ways, the Indus Valley was luckier than some other civilizations. It had richer soil and more sources of water, and its valley covered a much larger area of land. So people here were lucky in their environment. About 3000 BCE, cities began to grow in the Indus Valley. Archaeologists have found and explored 2 great cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, as well as some smaller towns. Compared with other ancient cities, they seem surprisingly modern, at least for a city more than 4,000 years old. Cities had sewer systems, and some houses even had indoor bathrooms. They used math to plan cities with a grid system of streets. They built huge granaries to store food. With all those advantages, it's not surprising that the people of the Indus Valley cities had lots of goods to trade with their neighbors. Traders carried cotton cloth, which was still something new. They also traded jewelry, pottery, and teak wood through the Middle East and into ancient Egypt. So then, why is it that we know less about these interesting people in the Indus Valley than we do about other ancient civilizations, like Egypt, for instance? Archaeologists have found stone seals with images and writings on them. They haven't yet deciphered them to know what they say. And they have found carvings and statues that might show beliefs about religion. Mysteriously, they haven't found a lot of the other things that help tell us about ancient civilizations, like statues of rulers or religious temples. And of course, they haven't yet been able to read the pictures and written symbols from the Indus Valley. What might they mean? What did they want to say to us? Those are great questions. But another one is, what happened to the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro? Around 1700 BCE, this interesting culture began to vanish. People deserted the cities. Why? Climate change, disease, invasion? Maybe. No one is sure, though drought seems like the likeliest explanation. If you were an archaeologist, what clues would you look for to learn more about the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro?
All right, so at this time, please check out these 5 vocab words. You have subcontinent, a large landmass that is set apart from the rest of the continent. River system, main river and all of the other rivers and streams that drain into it. Monsoon, seasonal wind that brings rain to the Indian subcontinent during parts of the year. Granary, special building used to hold grain. And citadel, fortified area. Please take 5 minutes and get page 1 of your digital notebook filled out. You can use the PowerPoint definition by copying and pasting into here, or you can click on the word if you have Savas up and type the definition from Savas. Moving on to page 2 of your digital notebook, you need to press next 1 time to get to this next page. What is the Indian subcontinent?
What is the Indian subcontinent? Geographers divide the continent of Asia into regions. One of these regions is South Asia. It looks like a huge triangle jutting out into the Indian Ocean. Today, it includes the countries of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, and Bhutan. India is by far the biggest country in the region. For much of its history, all of South Asia was known simply as India. It is still called the Indian subcontinent. A subcontinent is a large landmass that is set apart from the rest of the continent. The Indian subcontinent stretches almost 2,000 miles from north to south. In some places, it is nearly as wide from east to west. The subcontinent is separated from the rest of Asia by the towering Himalayas and Hindu Kush, 2 mountain ranges to the north.
Number 1 on page 2 of your digital notebook. This is a quiz question. If you look, all 3 questions on page 2 are quiz questions. So number 1 goes with this circled yellow text. What physical feature separates the subcontinent of India from the rest of Asia? Take a minute and get that answer now.
Systems. The Indus River flows across the northwestern part of the subcontinent. The Indus forms part of a river system, or a main river, and all of the other rivers and streams that drain into it. Another river, which is dry, but flowed parallel to the Indus, was the Saraswati. Recently, archaeologists have found almost 600 towns and villages buried in sand along the course of this now dry river. India's first civilization grew around the valleys of the Indus and Saraswati rivers. This civilization developed in an area that is dry most of the year. When the river flooded, it left behind very rich soil. River water let farmers harvest plentiful crops. These crops fed the cities of the civilization. To the east, the Ganges River flows more than 1,500 miles across the northern part of the subcontinent. Its floods created a huge fertile plain. After the Indus-Saraswati civilization died out, the Ganges Plain became the center of Indian civilization.
Number 2, where did the first civilization of India arise?
Climate. Much of the Indian subcontinent has a tropical climate. Seasonal winds, known as monsoons, help shape life in this region. In the winter, dry monsoon winds blow from the land to the sea. Little rain falls. In the summer, wet winds from the ocean blow onto the land. They bring rain, which provides water for crops and a welcome break from the intense heat. For much of its history, Indian agriculture depended on the summer monsoon. If the rains came on time, all was well. If the rains came late or not at all, crops died and people could starve.
Number 3, what did early farming villages in India depend on? So you will find that answer in this yellow circled text right there. If you look at this map, it's the Indian subcontinent physical geography. So it is showing us elevation. The blue is sea level. Then you go green, and that just means it's a little bit higher than sea level. And the higher up you go, the higher the elevation. So you can see this purple area is going to be a set of mountains of some sort because that is your highest elevation. Next page. Again, remove this wall if you need to. And we are moving on to page 3 of your digital notebook. This is pressing next 2 times from the beginning.
Indus Valley Civilization. Farmers began growing crops in hills near the Indus River system about 7000 BCE. With a steady food supply, the population grew. After 3000 BCE, cities began to develop on the broad plains of the Indus Valley. By about 2500 BCE, these cities were the centers of the advanced Indus Valley civilization. However, by around 1700 BCE, the civilization had largely disappeared.
I'm going to pause that there. So in this first pink highlighted text, it goes with number 1 on page 3 of your digital notebook. How long did farmers grow crops in the Indus Valley? You may need to do some math here. So if it started in 7000 BCE and the civilization disappeared in 1700 BCE, how many years was this?
Archaeologists have discovered most of what we know about the Indus Valley civilization. In the 1920s, they discovered the ruins of 2 great cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Since then, archaeologists have found more than 1,000 other towns and villages from this civilization.
Number 2, what 2 cities were discovered in 1920? You'll find that answer in the green highlighted text. Moving on to page 4 of the digital notebook.
Technology. Indus Valley cities were well planned and organized. The people of the Indus Valley built thick walls around their cities. They also built huge raised mounds of earth and brick in their cities. During times of flooding, these mounds remained above water. Many houses in these cities had a bathroom and toilet. Wastewater from houses flowed into brick-lined sewage channels. These were the world's first citywide sewer systems. A trash chute in many houses led to a bin in the street. Many of the achievements of the Indus Valley people showed an advanced knowledge of mathematics. Their cities were built with wide, straight streets in a grid pattern. They had an advanced system of weights and measurements using multiples of 10, like the modern metric system.
Number 3 on page 4 of your digital notebook. This is a quiz question. Many of the achievements of the ancient Indus Valley civilization was due to their advanced knowledge of what? You will find the answer in this circled yellow text.
Farming. The dry region of northwest India could not always depend on the monsoon rains. Therefore, farmers built irrigation channels and ditches. These brought river water to the wheat and barley fields. Some scholars think that these farmers stored their surplus crops in a granary or special building used to hold grain. They may have been the first farmers to grow cotton for making cloth.
Sorry about that. Number 4, what did farmers build to help water their wheat and barley fields? In this blue highlighted text, you will find that answer.
Farmers also raised cattle, sheep, goats, and chickens for food. They used oxen or cattle to pull carts. Animals seem to have been important to the Indus people. They carved wooden animals and painted pictures of animals on pottery. Trade. The Indus Valley environment was rich in resources for trade. Indus Valley jewelers made beautiful jewelry from precious stones. Traders sold this jewelry as far away as Mesopotamia, where they could travel by sea. Traders sold cotton cloth woven in the Indus Valley. They also sold teak, a valuable wood from a tree that grows in India. Indus Valley cities prospered from trade. Indus Valley traders used stone seals with writing to identify their goods. They stamped their seals on soft clay squares attached to their goods. Accurate weights and measures helped promote trade. Sumerian writers mentioned trade with people who probably came from the Indus Valley. Trade spread ideas between these two civilizations.
Number 5, what is teak? You will find that answer in this pink highlighted text. Also, I wanted to bring this picture up. Mohenjo-Daro is the largest of the Indus Valley civilization cities. It grew because farmers produced a surplus of food. We talked about that. The more food they have, the bigger the population can get. So, number 5, get your answer from the pink highlighted text. We are going to skip the interactive chart. You are more than welcome to go back and look at it at another time.
What mysteries surround the Indus Valley civilization? Artifacts and ruins of many buildings have been found in the Indus Valley. They provide a lot of information, but scholars still have many questions about this ancient civilization. They want to know more about its rulers, religion, and writing. They wonder about the reasons why it disappeared and where its people went.
All right, I just realized that I skipped this. So when we were looking at the trade routes, back on this page right here, these are the trade routes. So you have Egypt is the green, Mesopotamia is orange, and the purple is the Indus civilization. So someone actually asked me, Mrs. Atwood, where did India get all their grain? Well, if we think back to the last lesson, Egypt had a lot of grain. And look, they traded with them. Look at all of these red lines, and that is where the trade routes were. So these were paths, some kind of a route that they would either walk or take a boat. If it's on water, obviously it was boat. If it was over land, they walked. And you can see the cities with these black dots. These are all the cities that they would stop on in their trade route. So on page 5, please list 4 cities that were on the trade route. There are lots of cities. I see 1, 2, 3 right there, another one there. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There are 20 cities that are listed on this map. I'm asking you to give me 4 of them.
Government and religion. Clearly, the people of the Indus Valley were well organized. Their cities show a surprising level of planning. They all used a common system of weights and measures. These facts suggest that the Indus Valley people had a strong central government. Yet no royal statues or tombs have been found. This makes it seem unlikely that kings ruled the Indus Valley. Based on the available evidence, it just isn't possible to know for sure what kind of government the Indus Valley had. Most cities had a huge citadel or fortified area. The walled citadel was built on a raised platform of earth and brick that could have protected it from floodwaters or attackers. Scholars are not sure, but the citadel may have been a center of government, a place to lead religious ceremonies, or both. Religion is another part of the Indus Valley civilization about which little is known. Scholars have found no direct evidence of temples and no clear sign of activity led by religious leaders. However, some Indus Valley statues and small carvings have features that seem to show practices of Hinduism, a religion that developed later in this region. Some of the artifacts share characteristics of statues of Hindu gods, though the connection is still debated. Also, some Indus Valley carvings look like people meditating or offering a formal greeting, important practices in Hinduism today.
Number 1 on page 6 of your digital notebook. How was a citadel built? In this pink highlighted text, you will find that answer.
Writing. Scholars have not yet discovered how to read the symbols found on the stone seals and pottery of the Indus Valley. There are too few examples of each symbol to be sure of its meaning. Most experts think that these marks are a form of writing. However, they do not know if these markings are names, records of sales, or something else. Why did the Indus civilization disappear? The greatest mystery is what caused this civilization to disappear. Sometime before 1700 BCE, the Indus Valley people began to abandon their cities. The civilization declined rapidly after that. No one knows why. There are many possible explanations. Some evidence suggests that standing water in drains may have bred mosquitoes that spread disease and weakened Indus Valley populations. Indus Valley people may also have stripped forests of trees, leaving them without wood for building or fuel. A lack of forest cover could have caused severe floods that damaged Indus Valley cities. Their cattle may have overgrazed the land, leaving bare soil. Smaller herds could have led to starvation. Salt could also have built up in the soil, making it difficult to grow crops. Another possibility is that a major earthquake wiped out the population. Some historians think that climate change may have brought an end to the civilization. Years of drought could have dried up the rivers and made it impossible to feed city dwellers. The most widespread theory says that many people finally moved away towards the Ganges, where the rains were more regular.
Number 2, what caused the Indus Valley civilization to disappear? In this yellow circled text, you will find the answer to that question. Number 3, what are some possible explanations for why did the Indus civilization disappear? In this blue highlighted text, you will find a lot of different possibilities, but no one really knows for sure. But what are a couple possible explanations? Get out a couple answers from this blue highlighted text. While we are still on this page, I want to bring this up. Traders from the Indus Valley use seals like these. So, what do you think the animal symbols meant? I don't have a question over here to answer, but what do you think these animals meant? So, the traders would use these as like their card. I, what do you think? This looks like an elephant. This looks like a bison, maybe. This looks like a rhinoceros. Why do you think that, as this says, why do you think traders from the Indus Valley would have used seals like these? Why do you think they had these? Moving on to the next page is the end of the lesson. So let's go through your digital notebook. You have page 1, your 5 vocab words that need to be defined. Page 2, number 1, 2, and 3 are all quiz questions. Page 4, number 3 is a quiz question. And lastly, page 6, number 2 is a quiz question.